everyone, today's screencast is going to cover animal cells. You need to make sure that you've got a pen and some paper before we start. Once you've got a pen and paper, pause the screencast and write down today's LO, which is to understand the organelles in a typical animal cell and their role within the cell. Once you've written down the LO for today's screencast, you can have a go at the retrieval practice. We are looking at cells today. At the start of year 7, you will have covered cells already. Cells are the building blocks of all living things. You will have looked at the different subcellular structures that you find in an animal cell in year 7. You may have seen a diagram like this before. What I want you to try and do is see if you can remember any of the names of any of the components that are labelled on this animal cell. So pause the screencast, have a go at 1 through to 5, see if you can remember any of the names of these cell components. Okay, so once you've done that, we need to get a different coloured pen and we're going to mark the answers. So, number 1, this structure here is a mitochondrion. The plural of mitochondrion is mitochondria. We are going to go through the structure and the function of each of these cell structures in this screencast. Number 2 is the cell membrane. Number 3, we have ribosomes, and number 4, nucleus, and number 5, we have the cytoplasm. Your task throughout this screencast is going to be to draw your own diagram of a typical animal cell. I've put one here for reference. It doesn't have to be really detailed. It doesn't have to be very artistic. It can be very basic. But as we go through the following slides, we're going to look in detail at the structure and function of all the subcellular structures that are found in a cell. These can also be called organelles. So all of these features here are called organelles. As we go through each slide, I want you to add all of the organelles we go through to your diagram, and also make notes of the function of each of those organelles. This will help you with your next task that will come later in the screencast. Pause the screencast as we go through it if you want to view each slide for a little bit longer. First up, we have the mitochondria. When you are given a diagram of a cell, whether that's in class or in an exam, you can identify the mitochondria by looking for this distinct folded shape. So a mitochondria will always look similar to this one here. The mitochondria are the site of aerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration takes place inside the mitochondria. Energy is released through the process of aerobic respiration. Pause the video now and see if you can remember the word equation for aerobic respiration. You will have covered this in Key Stage 3 science. Okay, so the word equation for aerobic respiration is here. We've got glucose and oxygen reacting to form carbon dioxide and water. I've put energy in brackets here because energy is released during this reaction. It is not a product, okay? We don't produce energy, it's released. Now, the next component we're going to look at is the cytoplasm. So the cytoplasm is a jelly-like fluid and it's made up of mainly water. It fills the cell and surrounds the subcellular structure. So if we go back to the diagram we could see in the first slide, we can see here it fills the cell and surrounds the other organelles. Most of the chemical reactions that take place within a cell would take place in the cytoplasm. Next, we've got the cell membrane. When you're given a diagram, the cell membrane will always be found surrounding the cytoplasm. The cell membrane controls the movement of substances into and out of the cell. Ribosomes will usually be shown as very small circular structures on the diagram of the cell. So again, this is the diagram from the start of the video, and we've got really small compared to all the other organelles, really small circular structures. Ribosomes are the site of protein synthesis, so they make proteins. Finally, we've got the nucleus. The nucleus of a cell will usually be represented in a cell diagram by a single larger circular structure. So there will only be one nucleus within the cell, and it's usually quite a lot larger than all of the other organelles. The plural of nucleus is nuclei. Nuclei contain genetic information, or DNA, of an organism, and the nucleus controls the activity of the cell. Okay, what I want you to do now is, using your notes, try and fill in this table. So copy down the table, take some time to copy it down first, and then see if you can name the organelles with these structures and these functions. If you need to, you can rewind the screencast to help you, but have a go at this now. So pause the screencast. Okay, once you've finished your table and you think you've got all the answers, get your different coloured pen and we will mark through the answers. So the first organelle that we've got is a fluid that is mainly water, and most chemical reactions happen here. So we know that that is the cytoplasm. The second organelle we have is, it contains the DNA, and it controls the activities of the cell. So we know that that is the nucleus. The third one surrounds the cell and controls what moves into and out of the cell. So we know that must be the cell membrane. The fourth one are small circular structures found in the cytoplasm, and they synthesize proteins. They are the ribosomes. Final one are folded structures. They're also found in the cytoplasm. Aerobic respiration happens here and energy is released, so we know that that's the mitochondria. Make sure you've got all these written down. Make sure you've also got the structure and the function of all of them. You need to know everything that is on this slide. These are the organelles that you will typically find in an animal cell. Okay, the next 3 slides are going to show you 3 different exam questions using the information that we've presented in this screencast. What I want you to do is go through the next 3 slides and pause the video, do each question, and then I will go through the answers. So this is the first question. This is the second question. This is the third question, so this is your final question. Okay, so now we're going to go through the answers. So the answers to question 1, the first part of the question is asking us to look at structure A. It's telling us they are found both in an animal cell and a bacterial cell. We know all of the organelles that could be found within an animal cell, so we will be able to answer this question. A is pointing here, inside the cell. It's not pointing at a specific organelle. It's pointing at the cytoplasm. So A, we should have cytoplasm. Structure B, this organelle is surrounding the cytoplasm. So we know that this must be the cell membrane. Make sure you're marking your answers and make sure that if you're getting any of the answers wrong, you are correcting them so you can go back through your notes for revision. Okay, so we'll go through the answers to the second question now. We've got 3 structures and we need to match the structures to their functions. So our structures are cell membrane, mitochondrion, and ribosome. We already know the function for all 3 of these organelles. So if we look at the list on the right, we've got controls what substances enter the cell. We know that that must be the cell membrane. If we look at the next function in this list here, we've got photosynthesis. We haven't covered this yet, so we're going to leave this one out. Here next we've got protein synthesis. We know that the ribosomes are the site of protein synthesis. And then finally, respiration. We know that the mitochondrion are the site of respiration. So for the final question, we've got a diagram of an animal cell. It looks a little bit different to the diagram we've seen before, but the same rules apply. So I'm going to look here at A. It is a little bit difficult to see, but where the line actually ends, it's pointing to this white part here. And it's inside the cell membrane. It contains the other organelles. We know that structure A is the cytoplasm. We know the function of the cytoplasm is that it's where chemical reactions take place. Its structure is that it's a jelly-like fluid, mainly made up of water, but the function is that most chemical reactions take place there. If we now look at B, we've got B pointing to the very edge of our cell here. We know that the cell membrane surrounds an animal cell. So we know that B is cell membrane. We know that the function of the cell membrane is that it controls what goes into and out of the cell. For the last one, we've got a larger circular structure. There's only one of these in the whole cell. We know that this must be the nucleus. We know that the function of the nucleus is that it controls the activity of the cell. Its structure is that it contains the DNA or the genetic information of the cell, but its function is that it controls the activity of the cell. So make sure you've marked all your answers and corrected all your answers, and then you can use your notes from this screencast for revision.